Welcome to Gun 8, CQC Combatives with a Pistol. By now, I hope you've seen all of Gun 1 through 7 because you need to. All that is the foundation for what we're going to do here. And of course, this just comes from my experience, my research, 23 years of police work, detective, patrol, private investigation after that. Very, very important things that I think are vital to you surviving a close quarter gunfight, and things even to this day. This is the year 2005. We're going to cover topics in here that I will bet 99% of the shooters that are viewing this have never thought about or done before. It's quite revolutionary. Remember, not just with close quarter gun battles, but with every type of fight you'll be in your life, we face three kinds of enemies. The first enemy is someone who's a natural fighter. He's untrained perhaps, but he's a natural. Now, we went to school with this kid. He beat up everybody in school. Somehow he wins. He's tough, he's strong, and he seems to be a natural fighter. And then the next group of people that we fight are the unnatural fighters, or the poorly trained, studying in systems that have no basis in reality, and we can take advantage of those people with skill. Fortune favors the prepared, and if we're prepared, we can have the best odds of beating the poorly trained or the untrained. And then lastly, we have to fight the properly trained person, and that is, thank goodness, a small percentage of the world. So these are the three types of people that we have to deal with. And as luck would have it, most of the folks we have to fight in the real world are probably untrained. And also, gun or no gun, there are three responses that people usually do when you're grabbed. The first one, and probably the most universally common, is if someone grabs you, you explosively pull or yank away. It's very typical. All good fighting systems, and there are few, when you do attacks and grappling and so forth, you should prepare for the explosive retraction. And one of the ways to do that is to step forward and ride with it, and then understand that this reaction is going to happen, and it may screw up your original plan. But the first one is the explosive retraction. See how fast that could happen. The next common thing that people do is they isometric up. They lock in. Tiny people with small bodies have incredible adrenalized isometric. And adrenaline can hit fast and bathe these people real fast, and they have extra strength in their isometrics. And if you've ever had a handcuff an uncooperative person and they lock their arms out and you can't bring them together, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So the second one is the isometric. And the third one is your worst nightmare, the person who grabs and they charge forward aggressively. So the big three: explosive pullback, isometric response, and then charging forward when grabbed, are the three things in close quarter combat that we need to discuss. The reason I'm bringing some of these universal principles up is I'm convinced that there will be people who, by this gun video all by itself without any other of the other levels that we've discussed. And these do relate importantly to close quarter. I'm going to talk about is something that few people have ever really mentioned and looked at, and that is the three responses when a close quarter person is shot. And if I'm battling this person here and I pull out this weapon and I get the first shot in, one of the things that happens scientifically is he drops the weapon. The impact upon the body causes him to drop the weapon. This happens a lot. This, Mr. Good Guy, can happen to you and probably will. That is why I am a proponent of a tether or a lanyard, or some people call them leashes on your handguns, because you will drop your gun. And those apparatuses on your professional gun belt is a very important device that you may well statistically need. It's not sexy, it's not macho, but just look at the results of shootings and how many people, how many bad guys, and then how many good guys, upon the impact of a gun, lose their M4, their M16, or their pistol. There's a lot of them, and you got to understand this. And so a large percentage of people drop their weapon. The next scary thing that's hardly ever discussed is that when you shoot a person, let's just say low into the body and his brain is still functioning, he's still pissed. And he may convulse and shoot you several times. And so we're going to do some combat scenarios later in this production that relate directly to this problem. I call them riding the gun down because it's a vital life-saving thing. But he will A, lose the gun, B, convulse and fire on the way down, and C, sometimes do nothing. Just fall down like a shot guy and not drop his gun or shoot you. But I want you to be aware of these three possibilities that happen and how they'll fit into our later combat scenario. About being in the clutches of each other in real close quarter. Remember, is it 45 to 65% of gunfights are extremely close and involve people that charge in and different things of this nature. And so what we have is a quick discussion now before we don't want to break the momentum of the combat scenarios up with a lot of science talk. But you have a thumbs up grab or a thumbs down grab. And then you have arm wraps as captures. And so these are the main situations that we're going to be dealing with. What constitutes a thumb up or a thumb down grab is the reflex of the person. Remember, the startle reflexes of people, when they raise their forearms up, their thumb is down. And they sometimes latch onto you with a thumb down grip. We have painstakingly covered this material in Knife 8. The whole module is called In the Clutches Of. And so when you have these captures, you have several solutions that we're going to talk about in the combat scenarios, but basically you can try to maneuver your wrist to shoot. You have circular releases. You have, if he catches you this way, you have joint lock releases. You have, if he any kind of rip out releases, things that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes on this production. How people get caught in low quick draw checkmates or high quick draw checkmates is very typical to how they drew the weapon. Remember that we talked in the prior levels that there are two kinds of ways that the bad guy shoots at you. He pulls the weapon up, turns at a right angle, and thrusts it forward. Or they bowl or scoop the gun up in like a 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock presentation. If the person is a scooper and you interrupt it, you'll catch it on the low side. If a person is a right angle person, you may catch it on the high side. That's how we researched this to discover the different ways that a person will wind up in these captures. As close up, you're interfering with a quick draw. And these are the two ways they try to shoot you, and often the two ways you subsequently wind up catching them. So there'll be a lot of talk in the combat scenarios about being in the clutches of and hearing loss. And once again, under the varying responses of adrenaline situations, people report tunnel vision, they report hearing loss, and other people report acute hearing and vision, things that hearing and seeing better than they ever have before. Again, I think depends on the shape and condition of that person. I myself have never had the benefit of hearing of the stories where people have been in gunfights and they report that the pistol explosion with unprotected ears was less than they imagined, like their body was protecting their hearing. And there is selective hearing. However, I have not experienced that. I've been around, we've done some chases with guns, and I've been in and around some gunfights. My ears get wiped out. And I still, to this day, I think, suffer ear problems. I disarmed a pistol from a guy, a revolver that went off very, very close to my head as we were taking the pistol away, and it just wiped my ear out. It was just terrible. So I still may suffer from hearing problems from that. I was never lucky enough to get that natural protection. Another thing I think about is most people spend their entire lives shooting with hearing protection on. And so when they actually hear the real gun go off, they may perceive that it isn't as loud as they expected because they've never heard a real gun go off close up or nearby without having hearing protection on. But nonetheless, you might be prepared close up psychologically to realize it's chaotic and that you may have some problems. You may have hearing shut down on you. You may have visual problems. Everyone just about tunnel vision. And stay in shape, man. Go to the gym. Work that heart rate. You know, it's not just about the heart, it's also about the chemicals of fear and so forth that come through your body. But the stronger your heart is, the better your condition of your body, the better you will be able to handle adrenaline. And that's fortune favors the prepared. Worry about that. We talked briefly also about a bullet path. When you're close quarter fighting with someone, the angle that you're shooting may be detrimental to you. It may go into his arm, travel down his forearm, travel to hit his other arm, go through his arm, and go into you. So in these close quarter situations, be very concerned about bullet paths. And I know it's hard to think about in the chaos of a fight, but we talk some on this in Gun 3, and it's an issue that we need to be aware of. Standing fighting or ground fighting. In combat, we shoot from awkward positions. It's very important to understand that. And your classic range little ditties that you do don't often cover these awkward positions. Many people have been shot with a wrist angle up like this when they're caught down here, and a wrist angle turning like this. People are shot at from these positions. I'm going to suggest right now very quickly, so as not to interrupt the combat scenarios later, that in order for this weapon to function, this slide gets blown back by an explosion and a shell comes out. In order for this resistance to go this way, there has to be sufficient resistance pushing this way. If there's not the appropriate amount, and it doesn't take much, but if there's not an appropriate amount, the slide will not go all the way back, the bullet will not come out, and you will have what we insiders call a MAL, M-A-L, short for malfunction. And so it is important that if you think that you're going to be shooting from awkward positions, take your gun and shoot them in awkward positions. See how high up you can shoot this gun that it will still function in these different angles. And this way you can ensure to yourself that the slide will function when shot from an awkward position. In close quarter combat, a common problem is done by the untrained and the trained, and that is when you're close up, ramming the gun into the person's body and trying to pull the trigger. Now, we all know that on some, when the barrel protrudes past the end of the weapon, the slide can usually function freely. But if the barrel is flat against the end of the slide, and this slide goes back in any slight way, it inhibits the weapon from being fired. Now, if I ram this up against a human rib cage hard with violence, it may not fire. If I stick it into the soft underbelly of somebody, that may still allow, that may not force, there's a big spring in here, and it may not allow, may not push the slide back. Here's just a classic example. I am going to put this gun, and this is empty with no ammo in it. I'm going to put this gun just lightly up against this wall here, and I'm going to pull the trigger. And you can see that it can happen. Now, look at this slight distance here. The slide is traveling ever so slightly back. Now I pull the trigger and it won't fire. This is what we talk about 45s and weapons that do this. But if I push this up against somebody's soft belly, it'll still go off. So just be aware, this is not so much a pressure issue too, as anybody who grabs your gun and pushes against the power of that spring, it knocks the gun out of battery, is the official terminology, and it doesn't allow a semi-automatic to fire. And so these are important issues in close quarter fighting. You push a gun up against somebody's head tightly, it will not shoot, you see. If you put it up against their neck, and there's not a lot of resistance against the barrel, it may shoot. So these are things that you have to know. And I've seen a lot of veteran people get mad in certain circumstances, which I'm not going to talk about now because, frankly, I'm not so sure the statute of limitations has passed yet. But people have shoved guns up against people, and they know better. But they still do it. They know better from training for years not to do it. But they still do it. And I'm like, where's that car? Where did you put that car? And they may be disabling their weapon. Gunfighting, to me, has always been an athletic endeavor. And it's not just standing on the range popping at paper targets. The paper universe, as I like to call it. I believe, as I've said, that for every 15 minutes you spend on the range, you need to have 45 minutes shooting people with simulated ammo. And that's that. If you're not learning how to gunfight while people are shooting at you, you're just not learning how to gunfight. Part of the athletic endeavor is footwork. Look at Gun 6. I'm not going to rehash all that for you. It's a shoot, move, and cover. And it's an important collection of footwork that you need to know. Charging in, back, side to side. If you spend your whole life shooting at the range and daydreaming about real combat, you'll never experience these realistic problems that happen 45 to sometimes 65% of the time in close quarter shooting, that you are able to grab the opponent as he is able to grab you. The pistol, the arm, whatever reflexively happens. And then when you pull your weapon, you really have two places to shoot. You can shoot below the arm and not muzzle your arm and destroy the pelvis area, which is good shooting. However, his brain is still functioning, and we have problems about him convulsively shooting you as he goes down, which is one of my big subjects in gun level 8, riding the pistol down after a man's been shot. This is the most undiscovered, untalked about, little known street survival tactic because so little training is done with hard bullets simunitions or whatever in close quarters. These people shoot you on the way down. They have three choices. They convulsively pull the pistol, they drop the pistol, or they do nothing. And so you have 40, 33, 45% chance that as soon as you shoot this guy, on the way down, he will reflexively shoot you. And that is more of a reality when you hit the pelvis and not the computer upstairs. If you want to hit the computer upstairs, you've got to muzzle this weapon across your arm to do so. But by taking that risk, you may shut him down right away and maybe not have these typical problems. So these are the harsh realities of close quarter combat, is that sometimes you will be muzzling yourself to kill the enemy. Just try not to shoot yourself and try to keep your finger off the trigger to the last possible second. But you have your choices, huh? You could shoot here, collapse his body, he would slowly fall down, and I've got to ride that pistol down. It's the entire thing is a one-handed affair, not a two-handed shoot, to make sure that he doesn't shoot you. Or you could shoot him in the head. Either way, I want you to ride the gun down. But worry about and be aware of the possibility that your arm is in the way, and to kill this guy, well, your arm is in the way. Never get too close to the opponent, huh? The step away kind of thing, the lunge and reach away that we talk about in these earlier levels. But in the close quarter fight, sometimes people draw fully frontal. And then sometimes people reflexively or are trained to put the weapon side back and draw safely. It's just good common sense. And so these are good ideas, but of course, we're going to discuss them immediately. If I turn away, and I'll face this way here. If I take this, you step forward this way or this foot steps back. God will figure that out for you. You're just getting your gun or knife or whatever it is away from this person. This lead hand comes up, and it does the pinning, passing, pulling, or pushing, or striking that's needed at the time. And this person could be right up in your face, you see. And so the hand goes back. You clear a jacket or whatever you need to do. You get the weapon and all the things we talked about in level 1, all the business of quick draw. Take this gun out, and now it's a shoot or don't shoot situation. You have your crazed Jack Nicholson moment, warning him to get back and save his life and get away from me, or you have to pull the trigger. We always tell people to tilt this weapon slightly sideways when it's up and close to your body. This allows the slide to function without it getting caught in your flannel shirt, your jacket, or whatever might be there that day, and allows the shell to eject freely. And if if you're in Alaska or Wisconsin or some places 7-8 months out of the year, you've got sweatshirts and clothing, and it can interfere with the function of the weapon. So you want to worry about this. I have seen some systems and guys talk about this being the position you're in. This is not the foundation position. This is an option from the foundation. I want this hand up to do something and not back here as your foundation move. Because you know what we do, and if you'll look at gun 4, we spend meticulous time doing counters to pistol quick draws. This is like a turnstile move. If you bat the back of my triceps, this frees up an attack from back here. Just look at gun 4 for all that material. I don't want to repeat all this for you. You already bought this. And I would be doing you a disservice if I kept repeating the basics over and over again. Look at gun 4. It's vital to understand these type of things. But your covered position is this way. A lot of guys are shooting down. They fear the muzzling of their own hand in combat, which is a viable fear. And if you shoot into the pelvis or the lower body of a person, you're pretty much screwing them up. You're destroying their ability to stand if you have any kind of weapon caliber whatsoever. And so shooting downward and tilted out is not a bad thing, unless you're in a plane. I've been told that the wiring for the controls of any major plane are run down the walkways of the plane. If you shoot downward into someone, that bullet may go out and down and out and travel down a leg, hit a knee, go out, hit the wiring, and you're going to crash anyway, whether it be the terrorist that takes you down or your own dumb gunshot. So aiming down in a plane is not such a great idea for the reasons that I just talked about. But nonetheless, this is your classic, typical defensive position, gun back. It's about as good as it's going to get, but not all people under stress will be doing this. You'll see many, many different reactions depending on the circumstances. Fighting is circumstantial, fighting is situational. Vital to your survival in a close quarter combat situation with a pistol is an unarmed combatives course. You've got to know how to strike wisely. You've got to know how to kick wisely. And if it should happen that you have a weapon in your hand, you've got to keep your finger off the trigger, especially while you're doing active non-shooting stuff like punching and kicking, because we have a sympathetic reaction in our body. In summary, if you extend this way, you have a tendency to compress your fingers and you could have an accidental discharge. And so it is important while you're duking it out with a person, and there's a reason you're not shooting him yet, could be a crowded scene, whatever it is. If you're not going to shoot him and you've got to fight him and your gun is out, or you're throwing a non-felon aside to shoot someone, or your felon is unarmed and it's a little touchy right now whether or not you could shoot him. Keep your finger off the trigger until you decide to do the shooting. And in all your practice with kicking and striking, you need to hold a gun in your gun hand, and you need to keep your finger off the trigger. And please also, percentage of time, switch hands, because you need to worry about the time when you're shooting, you've passed the gun off. Many police instructors will tell you to pass the gun to your weak side and fight with your strong side. And this is a common taught procedure. And so you're going to have to do all these punches and strikes from your weak side also. We've explored just now the empty hand strikes that support close quarter pistol combatives. Now let's take a look at the idea of using the weapon, this several pounds of metal, as a striking tool also. Now, in some quarters of firearm instruction, using a pistol as a striking implement, as an impact weapon, is controversial. But really, it's quite wise, and I like to show it as an option. Many people like to do it. Years ago, we called these things pistol whipping. But now it's come back. My good friend Steve Christic has created a program implementing pistol strikes. The one hand or two hand. You strike with the underbelly of the weapon. You strike with the handle. You strike with the top of the weapon. And many times, if you practice these, you realize that this does not knock the gun out of battery. If you feel like it did, and you hit the charging unarmed person because your gun was out, well then, just clear a weapon, knock a bullet out, see if you can get it back running again. But you may not need to. But some people who strike with the weapon do this as a matter of practice. I just don't know what to tell you about that. If that's what you feel like doing, that's fine. But reflexively, there are times when you're going to have to strike. Others in the business do the hand switch and think they can fight from here. And if they can, that's terrific. Notice whether you strike with the weapon or you strike with your hand, your finger needs to be off the trigger to prevent accidental discharge. When you're in this business, you know that your gun is out sometimes and you just can't shoot the person. And sometimes the bad guy knows this too. And so you're left with only using the weapon as a striking tool. Here are some of the Christic developed drills that incorporate using the weapon as an impact weapon. Important issue. A gun can't solve everything. And sometimes you may have to delay drawing your weapon and engage this guy in unarmed combatives first before, otherwise he's just going to beat you up. And so what we'd like to try to do here is to save a lot of time and not make big speeches about this, but simply show in different distances just how bad this is. Now, of course, he could be pulling a gun too, and that's going to be coming in a second. But right now, it's just the idea that, oh my God, I can't pull my gun out. Most people, most criminals do not have holsters. They're pulling their guns from their pocket or their belt line or from under their sweatshirt or something like this. And so this would be a typical situation. We're going to have Rawhide here start very, very close. And the bad guys, as usual, get to initiate. And they start to attack him. And we'll just see how easy it is for him to pull out that pistol under this attack. And what you do next is you do that once or twice, and then you step back a little bit here. You do that once or twice, you step back, and you begin to see that there is a distance where the pistol quick draw is achievable. So let's just experiment with a couple of those. Part of this healthy workout experiment now is that he's now discovered how far away he needs to be to try to pull this weapon out. It's just a stress test, really, because he may be pulling a gun too, and that's what we're going to talk about now. He's going to be fighting with that. He's got a gun. He's got a gun here. He's going to be fighting with that. We don't know who's going to start, but somebody will start a bit of a fight. And we just want your guys to experience this and see just, that it's not easy. Okay, do you see how every time it's different? One time he gets his gun out, one time he can't. It changes quite a bit. And the next thing we're going to do is put the airsoft pistols into it. So let's go get those and eye protection in. Of course, when we get to this point, you remember our speech back in level 1 about simulated ammo. The gas guns hurt, the simunitions hurt, the rubber bands don't, the airsoft kind of does. And so everybody in the room, when you break out an airsoft gun, everybody should have eye protection on, because these little bullets just bang all over the place. And even if you think those guys are safe over there, they can still have a problem. And then you've got these paintball apparatuses. Remember, paintball is fine, but it's not user-friendly to your training rooms, buildings, cars, etc. You have to have a whole room dedicated to where you don't care about the paint on the wall. And you have to have cars that you don't care about. You have to have a back of a building that you don't care about. So paintball has to have its own dedicated environment, which is not conducive to quick, easy, cheap police, military, citizen training, where the airsofts and perhaps the gas gun will put a ding in a wall. And so airsoft seems to be that level where we can go anywhere, cheap, and get some serious training done. But nonetheless, you might buy these at Target or Walmart or any paintball place. They're very cheap, give you a little bit more protection, and pad up, man. Pad up as much as you want. But at least have these on, and you can use the airsoft stuff pretty well. Now we're going to get into a situation where our guys are going to start. These are like our advanced Rambo drills. Remember, we had the draw and shoot drills in level 1. These are advanced problems and a continuation of those situations. Let's just start with their hands like this, maybe on each other's throat. And then you may decide to, it's freestyle. Next time you may realize you can hold them in and pull or whatever, but let's see a few of these. Do you get the idea that both these guys are dying? They're shooting each other. And after a while, you realize that the person who charges in, empty hand, fighting, and stuns and diminishes and then pulls his gun is probably going to be the one that's winning. Otherwise, both these guys are dying all the time, aren't they? They're going to the side. They're doing everything they tell you on the range. Run to the side, run here. And the person is just following the gun and shooting them when they run to the side. Running for cover is a fantastic strategy. Just taking 3 steps, I just don't know. And stopping or something is least effective as a dead run to cover while firing suppressive fire at the person. And so now let's let these guys experiment a little bit and realize that they might have to duke it out before pulling the gun. Now, folks, what you're witnessing are real-life street gunfights. That's what it looks like. They get shot, they get diminished, their knee gets blown out, their hip gets taken out. It's going to look more like that than some kind of shootout, on the Gunsmoke show. And I love Gunsmoke and everything, but those guys doing the duels, it's a little bit different. Decide, you can't, if you go to your gun, statistically, you may both die, and so you have to make a decision. Do I delay my draw and fight on till I get a chance to draw and shoot? Smarter strategy. As you recall, in gun level 3, we discussed these problems of drawing your gun to freeze a person, to intimidate him, and to get him to surrender, not pull his gun or whatever. And then suddenly, like in a suicide by cop situation, or just a crazed person, they charge you with your gun, and you are not really at that moment, if videotaped by the local news, really free to shoot that person down, unless he is Hulk Hogan and you are a Pee Wee Herman or a lesser sized person in some way, and justify that. And so you're left with a tactical reholster of your weapon, which is a stress movement under a football charge of a crazy person, or you're going to have to fight with that gun in your hand. Now, we broached this subject in Gun 3. We had our Outside Invasion series and possibly a pistol pass-off, but it is good now to do some combat scenarios where a person attacks you and your gun is out, just to see what it feels like and to experiment with some of these strikes. Let's take a look at the difference between perception of reality and reality. And one of my favorite examples and a great teaching tool to really bring out all these issues is going to be the scene in Collateral, the Tom Cruise movie where he's the hitman and Jamie Lee Foxx is in the taxi cab. There's a scene in the alleyway where a man's got a gun on Cruise and he does the picture boy, poster boy do. He throws his jacket back, he pulls out a gun in the perfect two-handed grip, shoots one guy, shoots the other guy, and we hear a talk, industry talk of how cool that was, and where did what SAS Delta person taught Tom Cruise how to shoot. Me, when I saw that, I gagged, because I thought that it was so contrived and unrealistic, and then here's why. Remember in the situation, we had a guy right about here holding a gun very close to Cruise, and we had his partner, who you presume had a gun, in the parking lot, but it wasn't shown. And so in the movie, Cruise slaps this gun away, puts out his jacket, pulls this out into a two-handed grip, bang, 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 shoots him down, bang, 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 shoots him down. Ooh, that's some range shooting right there. Paper target range shooting. And so what our problem is going to be quite likely if he is Tom Cruise. This is probably percentage-wise what's likely to happen. I have this gun on him. He slaps it over. He pulls it out and he shoots me. As I get shot, I fall down and I convulse and shoot him all the way down. That is a very likely percentage happening. That's probably what's going to happen to Tom Cruise in real life. Remember the three percentages: convulsion, drop gun, or do nothing. Here's where we get to talk about the key, usually never brought up or discussed, principle of riding the gun down. Because if you don't ride the gun down, we could have serious problems. Here's our bad guy in the Cruise movie. Hey, I'm Tom Cruise this time. Here's a bad guy. Now, here's where we screwed up. God let Tom Cruise touch that gun and bat it aside, and he stepped back, had to get into his poster boy, two-handed grip position. But see, God let him touch the gun. He should have held on to it. He could render it to a one-shot or no-shot operation by holding on to it, even if it should fire. You've got the option: cut hand, blown out brains. Cut hand, blown out brains. And so we're here. We clear this out of the way. He gets his gun out and shoots. Now, what real people, when they're shot, they fall. Look at me ride that gun down, and then look at me shoot him. I don't let the convulsive pistol shots hit me. Man, this is the essence of close quarter combat shooting. And you only discover this with interactive training. That's why I'll bet 3/4 of you watching this now have never seen such a thing before. And you know, that's a disgrace. It's a disgrace that you haven't. Notice too that the entire affair is a single hand shot operation. This goes against range mentality of everything's a two-handed situation. So that's how poor Tom should have realistically finished the gun battle. But you have got to ride that gun down, because they could still shoot you. Here we have I call it quick draw checkmates. Remember, in the clutches of, you have, let's just take our guns out and we'll demonstrate this here. You have high in the clutches of, low in the clutches of, split, one high, one low. 10% of the time you've got a righty versus lefty, and you have arm wrap traps or body wraps. And these are the battles of in the clutches of. And they can happen with a knife, with a stick, and of course with a pistol. And so here's, based on true shootings, a couple of things that we need to worry about. If he draws up, and by the way, these aren't just pistol quick draw problems. These happen in real life after the guns are up. And he does that right angle delivery and kind of thrusts it forward, and I catch it this way. And he does the same thing. This is how we have a high in the clutches of. And let's just turn right around here. He who does this first starts to win the gunfight, doesn't he? Now, if I shoot him in the head or neck like this, please remember, as he starts to fall, you've got to ride that pistol down to make sure that he doesn't convulsively shoot you. Now, there's a few other tips here that I'd like to mention that are really life-saving tips that I really don't hear anybody else talk about. And so if I'm up here, I catch here, giant C-clamp, I'd like to put a death grip on his wrist. You know, and if I just hold his wrist loosely, he can bend it. If I put a death grip on it, there's resistance to the bend. Now, if we are of medium strength each other, we'll probably be able to do that to each other. If he's a power lifter, super strong, whoop, he's going to defeat that. Not only do I want to catch, I want to grip this hand and take it out. Now you see he's got that much further to bend that pistol in to get a shot on me. I know this, he doesn't. 95, 99% of the public don't know this. My job is to immediately start blowing his brains out. As soon as he catches me, pull the trigger. Catch, pull the trigger, catch, pull the trigger. And what I'm trying to do here on the high line is take this weapon out and start shooting him. Please practice that. On the low line catch, the low in the clutches up, remember I'm putting a giant C-clamp out, C gun 4. We talk about these skill levels. In a box right here, the shooter's box, that all the action of a same side quick draw is coming out of. I drop that C-clamp kind of on from the shoulder guidance system on down. I catch this. He catches me. I do the same thing. I put a death grip on this wrist and take the gun out. And then from here, I start shooting him down, ever worried about where that pistol is so he doesn't get a chance to shoot me. So there are two combat scenarios that you can work on. A high in the clutches of and a low in the clutches of. Practice taking the gun away from you, and if you're lucky enough, if you catch the pistol, you're king. You render it to a one-shot, no-shot operation, and it is a crowbar to remove the gun from his body. But if you do catch the wrist and forearm, squeeze it, take it away from you as you bring yours in, and just let him have it. You'll recall we do the splitter in the knife course, a stress quick draw. And now I like to try to do this with a weapon, with a handgun, and we have issues here. We have holsters, remember I'm a big advocate of what we call the topside saddle. Before the Gracie invasion, the guards and mounts weren't very popular. And in an old police judo, the topside saddle sealed off all the weapons. My holster right here is now sealed off, and I've got a problem with this. And so this is an excellent position to be in a real world situation, whether you want to call it the guard or the mount or whatever, and all the strategies that we talk about from here. But if he's got me and we're in this fighting situation here, I am going to push up so that he pushes down, and just let go for a second. I am going to come down and out. And I'm going to take my head, and we say, fishtail my head out of the way because his head may come down. Oddly enough, the first time I do this with many people, they let go of me and post on the ground. They catch their head. It's a natural reflex, and then some people don't. So I like to continue it on sort of a worst-case scenario situation. I'm here, I push up and I push down and then out. And now he's got me pretty solid still. Almost always, when you study different aspects of ground fighting, you can move he can move you, and you can move him in this particular position. And so I am here, I raise this up, and this is a very weak arm of mine, since a lot of it is missing. The muscle is missing. If I can't get under here, I knee him up until I can. I make a bridge, and I get this hand free. And now my job is, if I'm fighting for my life, is to acquire my weapon, which is why this is different than the knife course, because I can fish in and get into my pocket and get out a knife, but my pistol is stuck in, it's not, fortunately, in this position. I'm going to take it right out. And what I'm going to do, I don't want to jam the gun and have all those slide problems we talked about into his body, yet many people instinctively do this. I'm going to take it and shoot him a couple of times, which I think is going to drive him over. This is if you're a citizen stuck in this position, depending on the circumstances, you're in a life or death situation. He's on top of you. If he's a rapist, whatever, I think you've got a justified shooting here, because remember, statistically, bad guys take your gun and shoot you with it. And there is a gun in the situation. You brought it. And if you're about to black out and you've got a gun, you're in fear of your life, or you certainly should be. Now, you see that knee drive. Let me do this in the air so we can show this. I am here, I push down, I push out, I get my head out of the way, I hook behind, I knee if I have to drive the body up, and now I've got to worry, he's over here, I have to access my pistol in some way. Keep the knees going. Really, they're thigh strikes, they're not knee strikes, and until you can get this. Now, the thing we discovered in a SWAT training situation, when I was teaching a bunch of military SWAT guys and the city that came in, is that you have retention holsters that get in the way of you pulling your pistol when you're on the ground. And some people have developed a method. They raise their body up to try to twist the gun in the angles necessary to pull it out. It's a close quarter ground fighting problem that I really want you to be aware of. But in gunfire, we worked on interrupting the quick draw in the early phase, utilizing the shooter's triangle in some way, and we turned it into an arm wrap. And some people want to turn it into a complete jiu-jitsu armbar hammerlock. That's maybe too technical. I'm not worried about that. I just want to screw up his quick draw. He's pulling a gun on you. It is a deadly force situation. So we're going to shoot him close up. Now there is no, he may have the gun or knife in his hand at this point still. The desensitization of your troops, your students, doing this over and over again is vital. You've got to pull your gun and shoot close and get people used to doing that. It's just absolute necessity, that you do this. So here we have our guy. He goes to pull that. He's a bad guy. He's got a gun in a holster. I charge forward and hit. I get this rear armbar hammerlock. Ho! He's still got that gun in his hand. I take him down. Look at how I ride the gun down to make sure that he isn't going to shoot me with it on the way down. So it's a rear armbar hammerlock combat scenario. You got to pull the trigger, and your people need to see the bullet hit the person. They're not going to see a real bullet hit the person, but it's all part of the desensitization of being able to develop not just the purposeful will to kill. We talk about this in level 1, but the reflexive will to kill. Take the mind out of it. Just do it. Just do it from repetition training. It's very important. And let's look at it from this side. Here's our guy. Hey, look at me. I'm not pulling my gun, am I? Otherwise, we're just going to back away and shoot each other in a useless effort of a suicide pact. I see this happen and I charge forward. I hit him. I'm able to smother the arm. He's got this gun out. I can't stay here very long. And then we got him. Practice this a lot. Here's another combat scenario that you can practice against a person with that two-handed grip on you who is orchestrating a crime scene. He's got multi-prisoners of war he's dealing with, whatever the situation is. Your hands are up and you've just been taken prisoner. Remember what we said in all the prior gun levels. Keep your surrendering hands moving, because if they're still and you jump, it's a startle for him. He may shoot you even if he didn't want to. Disguise your motion with your surrendering hands being in motion, and don't target your target with your eyes. Look away, be panicked. And so what we're going to do here is wrap this guy's arm up, pull your gun, and then let him have it. Now watch him start to fall. I have got to worry about that pistol, don't I? I've got to worry about it. I can't let him shoot me on the... One last quick draw point. There's been a famous quick draw under the shirt or under the sweatshirt, under the sweat jacket pull, where the weapon is placed in, they call it the pelvis carry now, in a holster or in the belt line. And then a person on the range, on the signal, pulls up his shirt, grabs the weapon, and shoots. And this is a highly practiced quick draw. Only one problem is, folks, in the close quarter combat situation, your shirt pull in hand gets real busy fighting the bad guy. And what you're left with often as you're struggling for your life is some sort of desperate pull where you're pulling the gun out. You may get one shot off. Due to the clothing involved, you may not get the second shot off, as the slide will not cycle for you. And so I want you to be very aware of this problem. It's a highly practiced quick draw, but it may be very impractical 45 to 65% of the time. If you want to do it, you're going to have to practice arm busy, pull up the shirt, and get the weapon clear out of the clothing. Well, folks, we're just about out of time. So, in a quick conclusion, I'd like to say that close quarter pistol combatives is a hands-on grappling problem. This involves grabs and how to prepare for people who react to grabs. How do they commonly respond? It also is important to discuss and look at how people react to being shot, how they react to close quarter explosions. Remember, a close quarter explosion from a pistol will somehow destroy the person's shooting stance, his shooting platform, his concentration, and his plans. Just the sheer explosion alone. These also involve counters to quick draws. You have to see those in level 4 to get a good, concise look at those. It involves shooting from awkward positions and awkward angles that you don't ordinarily practice on the range. Close quarter pistol combatives involve unarmed versus gun and gun versus gun situations in standing, kneeling, sitting, and ground fighting situations. I certainly hope you've learned at least one thing from this production. Thanks for watching.